Hello, right, so the economic miracle. Now, I've got all my little notes down here because this one's quite numbersy and I don't want to give you any of the wrong information. So, economic miracle. Was there an economic miracle? Well, actually, some historians now would say that there was not a West German economic miracle because miracle suggests that there's something inexplicable about it. And Ludwig Erhard himself, the West German finance minister, really didn't like talk of there being a miracle because he is quite a kind of steady, fiscally conservative man who he didn't want people's expectations raised, and he just found the kind of description irritating, I think. But certainly, whether or not we're going to call it a miracle, we would certainly describe the scale of economic growth in West Germany between 1950, early 1950s and the mid 1960s as pretty extraordinary. From 1951 to 1965, West Germany averages 8% growth. And in 1955, the economic growth is 12%. From 1950 to 1955, the gross national produce almost doubles. And by 1954, and bear in mind that at the end of World War II, Germany is, or is it? We're going to come to that. West Germany and East Germany are absolutely on their knees. By 1954, they're the third trading power, the third largest exporter in the world after the USA and the UK. And by the late 1950s, they've achieved almost full employment. And that's even in the face of all of the refugees flooding West Germany from the east. So, something extraordinary is going on. Why? What are the causes of this extraordinary growth and or miracle? This is quite a listy one, actually, so I am going to number these when I do my text. First of all, one, pretty seriously good raw materials still there. So there's lots of coal, there's lots of iron, and you shouldn't really classify people as raw materials, but if we're going to talk about long-term advantages, the Nazi education system had been pretty horrific for things like biology, where you just taught kind of racist lies, and, literature or the arts or history had all become very nationalist and unreflective. But technically, the quality of technical education in Germany had remained strong. So you've got a well-educated population when it comes to things like engineers, technical industrial experts, and also people coming in from the east with similar sorts of skills from East Germany. So decent natural resources and an economically well-educated population, number one. Two, the policies of Bisonia before West Germany gets going, specifically the currency reform, which helps to remove the black market and reduce inflation, and the removal of price controls, which stimulates competition between private enterprises and therefore kind of stimulates economic growth. Worth noting that actually the initial impact of the removal of price controls is a soaring of prices, which is not instantly matched by a soaring of wages, and so there is significant hardship for a number of months for many West Germans. None of this so-called miracle happens overnight, but the stimulation of the business activity has the long-term consequence of causing economic growth, even though that's not instantly felt at the time. Three, I'm going to actually group 3 and 4. Yeah, so 3, the kind of social side of Christian Democrat policy. So remember we talked about the fact that the Christian Democrats are a centre-right party, but not necessarily in the form that you might expect in a kind of British or American context. They have a strong sense of social justice and purpose, and this is seen in both their labour legislation and their social legislation. The Co-Determination Law of 1951 and the Works Constitution Law of 1952 entrench this idea in the larger companies and the larger factories and mines of co-determination. What's co-determination? Co-determination is where labour, the workers, and remember we're talking about a post-war industrial economic setup, so miners, people working on the factory floor, the labourers, are represented at a board level and consulted in and participate in decision-making processes. What's the benefit of this? it promotes understanding between management and workers and reduces the risk of there being industrial unrest and the workers feeling that they're just being kind of shortchanged or taken for mugs or whatever, how you want to describe it, and it's just immediately going to strikes. But equally, management being able to explain longer term planning and perhaps avoid having to just consistently issue regular and significant pay rises if the workers are able to understand that, there will be jam tomorrow because they're involved in the decision-making process. Essentially, it promotes industrial harmony, reduces strikes, reduces the impact on the economy that you see in, say, 1970s Britain when industrial unrest really, really harms the economic productivity of the nation. And the other side of that is the social market economy, the social policies of the CDU. The social market economy is Ludwig Erhard's model for running the West German economy, and it could be described as capitalism with a human face. Very pro-business, very pro-competition, but underpinned by a strong sense of social justice and an actually really quite generous safety net of social security. And part of the reason that arguably this leads to what is part of the story for the economic miracle is no one feels they're being left behind. There is really a sense of prosperity for all. And that in itself feeds into the sense that the workers don't feel that they're necessarily being exploited, do work to some degree, collaboratively with industrial leaders. And there is a sense of everyone being in it together. Also promotes political stability, but that's another video. And you also see as part of this with, another consequence of the co-determination law, all this stuff feeds in with each other, is you do see after about the mid-1950s fairly significant regular wage increases, which means people have got more disposable income, which in itself stimulates demand, which of course then stimulates the market. So it all kind of feeds in with each other. Marshall aid used to be something that lots of people credited with being the cause of the economic miracle, and it certainly plays a role. Marshall aid is used largely for rebuilding industry and housing, but it's definitely not the full story, because in fact the United Kingdom receives double the volume of aid from America through the European Recovery Programme and does not see the scale of growth, so it's not the whole thing. Probably the most significant external stimulus is the Korean War from 1950 to 1953, which creates global demand, particularly from the American government, for coal and steel, which are the two big products of the Ruhr in West Germany. So that's a huge external stimulus for their goods and the economy. And then finally, the final thing to mention would be that in 1957, the government make the Bundesbank, so the Bank of West Germany, an independent bank. So decisions about things like interest rates, the amount of currency in circulation, are taken by this independent bank outside of the influence or control of the government, so therefore not subject to their political whims or desire to kind of curry favour, which promotes economic stability.